Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of the ACLU, I'm here to express our support for Representative Williams' legislation. You've heard lots of very good arguments as to why this bill should pass. I wanted to briefly address something that Representative Williams said at the beginning about two amendments we had recommended to her and which have been submitted to the committee. I thought it would be helpful to just very briefly explain those, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. One is very simple. There's a very important provision in this bill that prohibits discrimination against individuals based solely on the fact that they have one of these special driver's licenses. However, as the bill is worded, it just says it's a violation of the law to do that, but it doesn't say what law, it doesn't say what remedies are available. So we have recommended a very simple amendment that ties this sort of discrimination to the state Civil Rights Act, which has remedies already in place. The second amendment, which we also think is very important, has to do with the criminal record checks that would be conducted. The bill talks about felony convictions, either state or nationwide felony convictions. We're very concerned that what that would entail, and I think it's suggested in the Attorney General's testimony, which I haven't seen, but which the chair mentioned, of requiring fingerprints in order to allow them to go through federal databases. And the problem with that is those checks will likely end up going through immigration databases. Of course, the whole point of this bill is to encourage undocumented immigrants to come forward to be able to apply for a license. And we are fearful that if there is a requirement like this in the law of a national check, many people will be deterred from engaging in the opportunity to obtain one of these special licenses. If anybody is concerned that we need this national check because all these terrible felons we won't hear about are applying for licenses, I would just suggest that people who have those sorts of records are not the ones who are going to come forward in the first place to seek an actual license, give their name, give their address, and give their identifying information. But we are concerned that the person whose only offense is being here illegally will be deterred from doing so. And I would just emphasize that Rhode Island would be an outlier in having this type of automatic felony ban nationwide. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned is how strict this bill is compared to the other states that have enacted similar driver's license statutes. There are only two other states that are as strict in terms of this 2-year look back in tax requirements, and the nationwide criminal record check is also contrary to the vast majority of states that have passed these laws. So I hope that the committee will give careful consideration and approval to these amendments if it looks favorably upon the bill itself. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions for Mr. Brown? Representative Filippi?
Hi, Mr. Brown. Thanks for coming before us, sir.
Thank you.
If the federal government changes or amends its immigration policy to promote mass deportations, as some presidential candidates are advocating for, and we have a United States Attorney General who promotes that policy, and they seek to subpoena our DMV records for these types of licenses, is there any way that we can stop the turnover of those records to the federal government?
That's a good question. Offhand, I don't know the answer to that. I think it might be difficult to do that. Our concern, though, is at the very least, don't actually be handing them over voluntarily, which is essentially what you'd be doing if you're requiring fingerprinting and handing that information to the federal government.
But part of the records the DMV will be keeping are residency, photographs.
Yes.
So it is substantial identification of the people who are applying for these licenses, which will be on file and will be accessible by federal authorities.
Yes.
And so that is a concern, I think, of anyone applying for these licenses. And frankly, I think many people in this chamber of the data trail that we're going to be creating that will be subject to federal inspection at some point in the future if we have an administration that has a different immigration policy than the current one. So I just have to put that out there because that's something I think we all need to be cognizant of as we move forward forward with this?
I think that's true. I don't think that's a reason not to allow people to make a decision whether to apply for a license with that potential risk. I think that risk is slight. It is much less slight if you're actually handing the information over to the federal government in the first place through a national background check requirement.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you.